So I actually think that coming into this talk, I didn't know what Yarda's slides were. And since we switched orders, it makes perfect sense because I'm kind of elaborating on the ideas that he has already raised. So his presentation was mostly forward thinking in the track of what security actually does. And now I actually got into the position where I place the burden on all of you. So that's a good start. Well, I will be mainly talking about not that many technical topics. I will be diving just into them separately in very, very brief scenarios. So I think that ultimately this is something that most of us will know. This is an SDLC or software development lifecycle. This is something that is engraved almost in every company that does anything with software. And it's been like that for quite some time now. So what do I actually mean by the shared responsibility is that every single part of the business, not only the developers, are actively engaging in one of the phases at least, right? Because somebody has to pay for that product, somebody has to sell the product, stuff like that. So usually the requirement phase it's based on a prompt from a sales guy that they need to push out a new feature that is like super important towards like the product advancement in the landscape of the product itself. But then you get to more mature customers, and those customers will ask for regulations. They will ask for protocols to be implemented. They will be asking about how you're handling data and all of that. So you kind of need to traverse that into the whole life cycle as well. And then you also get other departments that are entering the picture with governance, risk, and compliance, who are trying to kind of take care of the whole landscape of data processing. You're not supposed to send out PII data, stuff like that. So essentially, every department in the company is somehow involved in the SDLC. So that's like the main idea. And then you get into where do we actually stand? And this is bad, not visible at all. But where do we actually stand with security and SDLC itself, right? So we would like to be at every single part of those brackets. We will probably not be, but it's something that we need to battle with. So one of the first things is to always seek out the issues that are present within the early stages of the development. So stuff like looking into vulnerabilities before you even before you even like see them visibly, right? So having some sort of an automated way to see them and potentially add them to backlog, remediate them, stuff like that. That's something that's super important. And Yarda was already talking about tools that would allow you to do that. I don't think that we need to deeper dive into that. And as everything with security is kind of revolving around the stakeholders who are most often the rest of the R&D organization, it is also super important to kind of see the problems in the same optic and try to actually actively engage with the developer teams, because otherwise you will just lose track. So letting them see into your workflows and stuff like that is very crucial for success of the whole shift left, which is also something that you might have previously heard in software testing, like QAs, where on one side you have testing in production, on the other side you have something like, oh, we're actually testing the features as we build them. And this is something that we want to achieve in security as well. So this whole idea is also catered towards organizations in a way that you get to pick the idea and make it your own, because every single company will have different ways of handling processes. They will be very similar, but always a little bit different. And that's why you have to adapt. Like if you go from one company to the other, like the methodology that you're using will not necessarily work every single time, right? So What I'm talking about is maybe stuff like going through audits, how you handle auditors, how you actually approach vulnerabilities. If you are open about those findings that you get or stuff like that, every company is a little bit different in that. Automating security tests, again, thank you, Arda. He was talking about it a lot. Basically, how do you catch those vulnerabilities early? You need some sort of a framework that will catch them, that will try to at least offload some of those things, but in a way that you will probably not raise a lot of false positives, which is a bit harder. So you're in the end fine-tuning that tool that is making that work for you every single cycle. And it can become tedious, but it is entirely essential for the success of the left shift. And then, as with everything security related, you're supposed to be partnering up. You're not supposed to be opposing every single idea that's there. So you need to aim for proactive communication, and you need to make yourself clear that you're there to help, not to oppose. So with that, you're building a culture of security. And that essentially means that you don't want to be seen as an obstacle within the whole process. You don't want to be seen as somebody who makes the process slower. You need to be seen as somebody who makes it faster. So we were talking about a lot of tools. We were talking about a lot of programs. And in the end, it is up to the security professionals to conceive the value in them. So with finding those vulnerabilities, it is easier for the new hired staff to jump into it, to understand the whole landscape. It is easier to push out some features because some of those things can also be used as modules for documentation. They can be used in many other ways. And I'm going to repeat myself, but again, the obstacle part is very important. If you use that credibility as a security professional, you don't have credibility ever, because then you get to see the side of the developer. If you're not empathetic enough, the relationship will just not work. But this is very closely tied to something like being very approachable. Being approachable in security is also half of the formula for success, because while you are visible, you are able to kind of convey the ideas, the changes that you would impose on the product, and you are able to communicate it clearly to the teams. You are being visible in internal channels and stuff like that is something that is super important, because that will garner feedback. You release something, you need feedback on it. If you actually get to that point where people are actively talking to you and they see that you're reasonable, which I know that there is a stigma around security that we're not reasonable. So I just want to get that out of the way. You will get to build a relationship with those groups, with those people that are somehow ingrained into the whole development process. And that leads us to this magical thing. And this leads us to something that is actually me imposing the idea on you about the Security Champion program. So this program is exactly what it sounds. You get a lot of people in the company, and you have, let's say, hundreds of developers, and you have a small security team that has like 14 people. How do those people see everything that's happening? It's almost impossible. You can have all the tooling that you need, you can have everything, and either you will be going through a lot of false positives, you will be going through numerous tedious tasks. Nobody will like that, and nobody will see any of those 5 values that I was showing you previously, because you will be bogged down with the work that you're doing. So in order to do that, you already have a few candidates that you're talking to based on your visibility in the previous slide. And you're kind of looking at them and you're seeing that, maybe there is a possibility that we can make their lives easier while making our lives easier as well. Because eventually, this is something that will take away the time from their day-to-day operations, right? This is something that you will have to work really hard to convey the value, not only to them, but to their managers, to the leaders of the company as well, because we know how it goes. Like it's, you have a success metric, for almost everything that you do these days, and it's super important to kind of hit that mark and to specify this very clearly to be able to hit the targets. The issue with this specific program is that you don't get that many options to start it again and restart it, because it's something that's, that either goes or it fails really quickly. So there is an absolute necessity to have a proper plan, a proper phase, or proper ways to engage with the members. Otherwise, you lose credibility and you don't have champions. So then you're helping them to get more and more invested into the stuff that you're working with. We will be going through threat modeling that Jarda already mentioned, which is something that they can help you very much so with. And it is also something that is very important for success of the whole SDLC from our perspective, because this is something that we need to be involved in. And then you have those people who are actually part of that community as some sort of a herald within that organization for the secure software development lifecycle. And yeah, you might say it's a victory, right? No. This is a process that needs to be nurtured. It needs to consist of office hours. People like, where is Jan? Jan can be involved as well, because just have a look at him. He's very eager to be involved in the process of at least supporting that community in a way that it will make them more engaged. And I'm talking about very small stuff that actually works, which is having proprietary merchandise that will show off that those people are actually involved with the program, or having badges in teams, whatever. Like this stuff is actually working when it comes to like those small rewards, because they're not doing it for the rewards. They are doing it because sometimes they're passionate about it. And it is super important to have those people being passionate about it, because otherwise, if you run the program in a way that you're asking for the people to come in and they do not volunteer, there is not that initial spark that would make them join. So you can have the candidates, you can hint that something like that is going on, but initially they should be the ones making the decision to join. So as always, we have technical difficulties because I had a different version of the slides. So we will skip through the previous one, which was basically mostly conveyed around the merchandise programs and stuff like that. So we have the threat modeling. Threat modeling is some sort of a diagrammic exercise, to put it very briefly, during which you are going through the feature that you are currently developing, or you have currently developed, like previously developed, right? It is something that is kind of helping you to shape the whole landscape in a way that you can actually see what is happening when it comes to data that is flowing through your software, when it comes to boundaries through which the software is accessed, and also when it comes to the data that's flowing through. So this threat modeling exercise is usually something that you're aiming for when you have various people of individuals. So almost everybody that is somehow involved in the product development can do a threat model. And it is something that is like an exercise of being somebody who is trying to break into the system and who's trying to take it down. It sounds very exhilarating. It's just diagramming. So then you actually get to the point where you get to ask the 4 cornerstone questions of threat modeling. And that is the first one, which is very good. What are we working on? And that's just a basic understanding of the feature, drafting out the initial idea, and looking into the data flows in a specific way. which is super important for it to kind of give you some value. Because mind you that this result of this whole exercise is also something that you can then use for architecture diagrams, and it is something that is used in various different places as well, like going through the vulnerabilities that were previously mentioned. Then you are actually, after you're done with the initial phase of just drawing out the feature, you will go into a phase where you're actually proactively asking about what could go wrong. So you're looking at that feature, left and right. You see that you have, publicly open port to SQL, stuff like that, that is actually mentioned in that model, and then you have the discussion around that. But like why do we have this and that, and then you realize that you have a bigger issue in the end sometimes. So then there is the question that will fill your backlog if you don't do it properly, and that is, what are we going to do about it? So during those two middle sessions, or questions, you're going through the possible vulnerabilities, their risk, the possibility of them being exploited, because, as Jarda said, again, there are so many vulnerabilities on the internet that are ranked as, almost highest rating, that will never be exploited because the situation is not there, ever. So you have to assign it a proper risk value, then put it into backlog, and then prioritize based on that. And then something that is a reflection phase of all of the threat modeling exercises, and it actually pops here back every single time that you need to make some sort of a design change, because somewhere during the development of the feature, a PM comes in and they ask you to redo something. This is something that is kind of helping you to look at the threat modeling exercise and see if you were counting on an occurrence that actually happened. And if it did, then yeah, you made a good job. I think that this question is very crucial to be asked before a security incident happens because of that feature, because otherwise it's by default a no. So how do we actually make this work and conceive the value of this? Again, because everything in here is based on a frequent collaboration. It is based on you being a person that is able to conceive the value of those features. And it's about you being able to tell the stakeholders what is actually going on. So if people take it as an empty exercise, as a checkbox for compliance that security teams have posted on them, it's basically useless, because nobody wants to do something that is just a requirement and they don't see any value in it. So this is also an indicator that the shift left was not entirely successful. Then you're going into a phase where you're actually aiming for the people to be happy with the tools and with the process that they are using. For threat modeling, you have like 4 or 5 basic methodologies that are basically telling you how to do that whole threat model. They are telling you either to go feature by feature, data flow by data flow, whatever. Like if the team is actually asked to do a threat modeling session, give them some sort of an explanation, give them some sort of a tool that you would like them to use, give them some sort of a methodology. But if they do it in a different way and it works, there's no issue. I've seen threat models in MS Paint. It works. If those people are actually thinking about that problem in a way that it makes sense to them, tooling is not something that should pose in their way. Then making again, the value being understood is something that, you don't want the threat model to be collecting dust in a confluence. You want it to be used by other teams who are building on the basis of that feature that was developed years ago. So you kind of want to see where the initial creators were seeing the issues, and you can get inspired of it. And then starting threat modeling is actually quite the opposite when it comes to launching security champions, because literally anyone can do it. You don't have to publish it anywhere. It's not an initiative that has to involve the whole company from the start. So you should, try it internally in your team. You should try it on your own. And then maybe since you already are thinking about those people that are the candidates for becoming security champions, you can take it to their teams and try it with them to kind of see if you're doing a good job. And also the thing about threat modeling is that it is entirely agnostic. You don't have to use it in software development. You can use it in like vendor checks. You can use it anywhere, because essentially this is something that will it involves a risk score tied to every action, and it is something that you can apply everywhere. So make it your own. And yeah, then looking back at the threat modeling skills is obviously something that needs to be continuous, because in every session you will find out that you forgot something the last time probably, and it happens. It's just like that. So then there is the last part, and that is being a contributor to the product itself when it comes to not nurturing only the relationships between the teams and trying to stand in the middle, but actually do some engineering. So based on those exercises, you can probably comfortably tell that if you're positioned in a place where you are doing a lot of threat modeling session, you and your team are doing that, you have kind of achieved to see the full picture of where the application can go, what can go wrong. You will spot things like inconsistent data flows, something like that the individual teams would be probably complaining about if there is like a mess in the structure. And you can be the one to drive that into a RFC, into a feature request, into something like that. And then, obviously, in case a security incident happens, you get an unlimited budget and you can do whatever, right? So you can ask for anything that you would like to, most of the time, sadly. So yeah, it is, in the end, again, about understanding where the people are, where they are coming from, and understanding that they might have issues with current development. Don't be pushy. Just ask them nicely, and eventually it will go the right way. Because in the end, in the land of software engineering, we're all just part of a puzzle. So yeah, let's have a chat. On the left-hand side, you can see a link to my Git book, which is full with references of just basically best practices around creating those programs or about threat modeling. I've also made the effort to mention some OSS projects that we are using. And on the right-hand side, you can see a link to a blog post from Product Security at Mews. Thank you.